Hey friends, welcome back to the Holistic Ease podcast. Today is a very special podcast. It is a Valentine special podcast. I have with me the love of my life. This is my husband, Billy. You can find him on social media, Ark and Burn Studios. And we're going to talk about relationship stuff. Yeah.
We have some experience.
We also have a license.
Yes. We have that too.
So as we're sitting down for Valentine's Day, maybe you're with the person that you love, or maybe you're thinking of someone that you love. We just wanted to share a little bit of our story and some things that have been helpful to us along the way. We have been married for almost 18 years, is it?
It'll be 18 in June.
So he's way better at remembering that than I am.
Mm-hmm.
But we've been together since I was 14 and I am 41. Right? I'm 41?
Yes.
He's also better at remembering that. So, we're going to enjoy some of our Damiana liqueur. Damiana is an herb that is an aphrodisiac, very appropriate for Valentine's Day.
Drink it up. Get this podcast over with.
So, I was getting things set up for this podcast today, and all of a sudden, Billy, after work, takes a shower and whatever, and then he came out in a tie. I wasn't really prepared for a tie.
This is kind of my internet debut, really. I mean, I don't do videos. I'm not... Curmudgeons are camera shy, so...
Yes. He also writes a blog called the Curmudgeon Devotionals. What's the website for that?
Curmudgeondevo.com.
There you go.
All one word, so...
Curmudgeondevo.com. I feel like you're not in the light very well. There, that's better. So... What you don't know is that below the tie, he's wearing sweatpants.
I'm wearing sweatpants.
Let's just be honest.
At least I'm wearing pants.
We're both wearing pants, so we can tell you that much. But today we're going to talk about relationship stuff. And I wanted to preface this whole conversation by saying that this is just our relationship. Relationships are very unique, and people's backgrounds and lifestyles are different, and they're... levels of commitment to their relationships are different, and this is just our experience and how we've come to understand our relationship and what that's looked like for us. So whatever works for you from this, great, take what you can, have fun with us, but if something doesn't resonate with you, don't feel like it has to resonate with you, because this is all about helping you to live a more holistic lifestyle with ease. Now, when we talk about holistic lifestyle, we think a lot about different wellness topics, and on this podcast I talk a lot about herbs and essential oils and all kinds of stuff like that. But one of the things that we really forget when it comes to our wellness is the quality of our relationships. And the quality of our relationships really does impact our health. In fact, they've done a lot of studies that men who are married live longer. Did you know that?
No.
Men who are married live longer.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I saw today an article about a study that was conducted that said 30% of Americans walk around in a post-concussion-like zombie state, and they've connected it to stress and poor quality of sleep, which can be tied to stress. And so when you think about emotional stress and relationships, and I think that has a lot of impact in people's lives.
For sure. And how we learn to roll with the punches of our relationship also drastically impacts our health, because our closest relationships really comprise what our quality of life is and what our lifestyle is. So if our quality of relationships is not positive or is not good, that is going to have a really negative impact on our wellness. And if our relationships are fulfilling and good, that can also have a very positive relationship.
Yeah,
impact on our wellness.
It's like the good book says, don't let the sun go down on your anger. You're just, people forget how much, stress, when you think about people's health, a lot of their habits and their behavior is probably a way to cope with stress. And we don't realize the toll that stress takes on our bodies. And when you have relationship problems that are not being 'It's not just a matter of I'll get over this or whatever. that stress is like a continual burden that you're carrying, and then the snowball thing, your habits and whatever. So
Yeah. So we're going to talk about the origins of our relationship and some of the things that we worked through. But to preface all of that, some of you are familiar with the Enneagram. I've done at least one podcast on the Enneagram now, and Billy and I both work with an Enneagram coach who has helped us to understand ourselves a little bit more, so that to give context to our relationship, sometimes it's helpful to know what someone's Enneagram is. So I'm an Enneagram 8, and we think you're what?
a 4. We think I'm not quite
4 or
done with
5.
the process. Somewhere in a 4 to 5.
Somewhere in there, a 4 or a 5.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that takes a long time to sort of settle in on. It took me a couple of years to figure out what mine is, but now that I know it, it also helps me to relate differently in relationships, because it helps me to have empathy and compassion for people that aren't like me. It also helps me to understand myself when I'm frustrated and so on and so forth. So I just wanted to share that little bit before we get into some of the juicy stuff. So let's talk about the juicy stuff. Let's talk about when we got together.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was 14.
Okay.
And your sister was my best friend.
Yeah. That worked pretty good for me, I guess. I liked that.
And I had eyes for somebody else for a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
But you and I were friends.
Yeah.
And we were friends first.
Yes.
So what do you remember about that time?
Well, I am going to say that any heterosexual man who's single and has a heterosexual girl as a friend is definitely thinking about romance. To make it PG. Yes. I was interested in you, on more than just a friend level, but I was a little bit shy about that, not assertive.
You were extremely shy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was attracted to you for sure.
Yeah. And there is definitely, it started out as friendship, which it was a genuine friendship. We spent a lot of wholesome time together with groups of people and whatnot, and but there was obviously more of a connection that was building over time.
Mm-hmm.
But it was weird for me because you were my best friend's brother, so it was weird. When we started dating, I almost felt like I was dating my brother. Which sounds kind of gross.
That's the friend zone
problem. My brother, yeah.
That's the friend zone problem, right?
Yeah, it was a big adjustment, and it actually really freaked me out to be with somebody that I did have a friendship with first, because in the relationships I was in previous to that, they were definitely not based on friendship or
started with infatuation and then kind of
very physically based.
Tried to establish the common ground afterwards.
For sure. And then we dated all through high school. We went to 3 proms together.
Yep, we were pretty serious.
And then I decided to go to college away to the big city.
And I went to Fargo.
And you went through your wild period. And we could have very easily ended up with other people at this point.
Yeah, I mean, we both had relationships. We still were friends through email. Email me. Send me your email address.
Fax me your phone number.
Could you write me a letter and include your email address so that I can email you?
Crazy. Like,
That's what it was. This
is the dial-up days.
So, yeah, I mean, I was in relationships in Fargo. None of them were super serious. I always kind of had a space in my heart for you and kind of thought you were the one that got away and didn't exactly have my life organized, and so it was probably, in my mind, the loving thing to not be attached to you, you know.
I've never heard you put it that way before.
So
it's probably true. At that point, you were really
not grounded in any meaningful respect and had no direction in life and just was kind of wandering the earth like a nomad, and
Quite literally.
pretty much, yeah,
Yeah.
sleeping in my car when I needed to and whatever, blah, blah, blah.
Right. And meanwhile, I was doing, of course, the cat's going to interrupt us. We have a very interruptive cat.
He's been with us for a long time, too.
He's also been with us a long time. He's quite demanding, so I apologize in advance. If you can hear him on this episode, that's Meowsifer. There he is. Yep.
He's... Let me tell you about my part of the story.
He's always so self-centered.
Meow, the first 2 letters of meow, right?
Yep.
Are me.
So during this time, I was in a very serious relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And I was actually in a lot of conversations with this person about getting married. And then he very suddenly broke things off, which I never really got an explanation for, other than he said this one thing to me. He said that he felt that I still had feelings for you. And at that time, I thought that was preposterous, because I felt like I only had feelings for him, and I felt like you were solidly in the friend zone. But looking back on it, we had maintained contact and ties and saw each other regularly as friends all through that. And
I mean, I helped you move more of your stuff from from Mott to Minneapolis and all that jazz.
came out to all my recitals.
Yep.
Like, did things that weren't what many of my other friends were doing. And he had picked up on that, and he was tuned into something that I wasn't tuned into at that time. So I'm kind of grateful for that, because it turned out well for everyone. But then, after college, still living in the big city, and you started getting your life more together.
Yeah, I had a good job and kind of had some direction and was growing up. I mean, eventually, shit or get off the pod, right? You know, I mean, yeah. Otherwise, you can't just stay in that arrested state forever. So.
And honestly, there was a long time there where I thought you might just kind of stay in that drifter phase for the rest of your life, and that was not very attractive to me.
No, there was a lingering worry in the back of my mind that that's what would happen too. You know, I didn't want to be just this kind of go nowhere nobody.
Yeah. And I've always been a very driven person and a very goals-oriented person, so that was something where I felt like we had a really big disconnect until you started to pull yourself together and I started to notice. And suddenly I was more attracted to you again.
Yeah.
And a year later we were married. That's pretty much how that story goes. When we decided we were kind of all in.
Yeah, I mean, we had history, so it's not like we had to...
It's not like we didn't know each other.
Yep, and I mean, I loved you, and I was just like, yes.
Yeah.
You know? So,
I know how I'm going to answer this question, but did you have a moment, like a specific moment, where you knew that we were supposed to be together?
Oh, I kind of always felt like you were the one forever, basically. So, that might have just been the Lord working on my life, like trying to say, you know, the little nudge never like gives you the direct thing, because that's kind of lame. So it just, so yeah, I was just, you had a lot going for you, and I was interested in it.
I had a moment, for sure. And it was a moment that really shocked me, because at this time, I still had feelings for this other person. And I was with you. I was on my way through Fargo, and you had told me some details about one of your relationships. And I had the most all-encompassing, indescribable jealousy that I've ever experienced in my life.
Yeah, I remember that.
It's like they talk about seeing red. Like, that literally is what happened to me. And I'm not really a super jealous person like that. So it was just like, what? And I was so like, I was having a complete internal meltdown in this moment because I was like, what is happening? Like, why am I so upset? Why am I so angry? This doesn't make any sense. I have feelings for this other person. And it was like, I red-pilled myself, basically, about my feelings for you in that moment. And what I realized in that moment is that I would never be at peace in my life with the idea of you being with somebody else. So it wasn't that we had everything all worked out. It was not smooth sailing for a long time. But I knew that my level of commitment to you was much deeper than I had realized, even just in our friendship. So that was kind of the moment where I was like, okay, there's something really significant here, and I need to explore this and be really honest about it, and we either need to figure it out or be completely done, because nothing else had ever made me feel like that before.
Yeah, I think we both kind of always kept that door open a little bit, you know? But, yeah, I don't know what to say. I remember that moment too, and I remember having to defend myself and just being like, wait, I'm me. I'm in charge of my life. There's nothing wrong. What? Why am I having to defend myself? I'm me. I'm in charge of me. I did this.
And I was equally confused and befuddled by the entire thing. So then, at this point, I knew that if we were going to have a relationship, we could not be long distance. We tried it for a while. It was very hard. And so I made the decision to move to be where you were, because I was unhappy where I was. I was not happy living in the city. But we chose not to live together before we got married.
No.
So do you have any regrets about that or any thoughts about that?
No. The funny thing is that I'm actually kind of a traditional guy in a lot of respects. My actions don't always demonstrate that, but like I was very okay with sort of taking that approach. Like the shacking up thing, I don't really, it's either go or don't go, right? It's like trying out the thing for a while. You know, that kind of goes to what this whole conversation's sort of evolving into, is like, what does commitment mean, and like what is the value of commitment, and why do you do it, and this whole, if you're stepping into it thinking, what is the upside for me in this, like I want to make sure it's good for me, you're kind of already shooting yourself in the foot. So
yeah. And somehow we had clarity about that, and I don't know if that's because of,
I also lived with like 5 guys, so the idea of us living together would have probably entailed you living in a house with a bunch of heathens.
Yeah, and I was not really interested in that.
It wouldn't have been good.
We had fun with those boys, but
yes, they're still lifelong friends.
Yes, but at that time, my mom and I called them the Lost Boys. It was like Peter Pan. It was like the Lost Boys. It was the Wild West.
Yeah, we were all in sort of a similar state of flux, right?
Yep.
Just like not clear on. And I think this happens for a lot of young people.
Mm-hmm.
They're just confused about what direction to take their life, and they're told that they need to go to college, and college seems like a nice kind of buffer between living at home and being in the real world, right? So you just do it whether you want to or not. In fact, that's even how I got to Fargo, is I enrolled in school just to have a reason to leave home. Mm-hmm. And so...
Well, I didn't have any, I would not have felt... This is my personal take on it. I know people feel differently about this choice. And, there can be some arguments in favor of living together before you're married, or reasons why people might feel even forced into that. But for me, I would have not felt respected as a person or as a woman if I had moved in with you. It was a line that I didn't feel like I wanted to cross with my own morals and ethics. And I knew that when I got married, I wanted that to be a really clear line in the sand. Like, my life was like this before, and it's like this afterwards, and it's going to look very different.
Yeah, it should be a defining moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and living together before marriage literally is a compromise. And, you know, if you start out in that state without, like, a ring on your finger, I mean, what's the incentive, right? It's kind of a, why buy the cow when you can have the steak for free, or whatever the expression is, or why go out for hamburger when there's steak at home, I guess. I don't know.
Or something along those lines. Yeah. And that's not everybody's choice. That's just our choice, and where we felt we wanted to, how we felt like we wanted to start our life. But you were in your mid-20s, and even though you loved me, and even though you wanted to be with me, you were still struggling with commitment, or the idea of letting go of a lot of the freedoms of your single life. And that was a challenge for us both before we got married and then after we got married. So what would you say to somebody in that situation that's struggling with those things?
Boy, that's tough. It's hard to know what to say to a person in that state. Like, I can imagine time traveling me now, going back to that young me. I know the state of mind I was in. I know everything about how I was living, and what I would say to him, like, get your life together. But words kind of just, it's hard to give words in that situation, because people know what the right thing to do is. They're just not doing it for whatever reason, right?
So let me ask you this. If you had stayed in that situation that you were in, and you were still in that situation now, would you feel happy and fulfilled by that?
No, I probably honestly wouldn't be alive.
Yes.
So, or at least in really a bad health state for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
I would even say that I'm healthier now than I was at that age for sure.
Oh yeah, without question.
But this is something that I think about a lot, and if anybody out there reads my blog on a regular basis, I'm kind of working through, like, what compels an individual to change their actions, right? Like, a lot of people know what the right thing to do is, right? Especially if we're talking about health.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody knows, don't eat too much garbage. Don't sit on your ass too much. Don't go to bed at a reasonable time. Get up, do some exercise, get some sunshine. We all know it. But it's so hard to do, right? It's so hard to execute.
Yeah.
And you just have to figure out a way to push yourself from behind, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you have to love someone enough to be willing to change, right? So
here we are. We're very seriously dating. I'm ready to get married. I think you're ready to get married. You are not a very proactive person.
No, and I'm pretty loosey-goosey about a lot of things there. And
so I tricked you into going ring shopping.
Yeah, more or less. I mean, it was all I needed.
Tell me now that you knew, but it was not clear at that time that you knew.
I needed some encouragement.
Yeah, that was basically what it was. Is that you, I think, had no idea what to do. So I told you I needed to get a watch fixed at the jeweler's, even though I don't wear a watch. Or at that time I didn't wear a watch. And you just willingly went along with it. And then the next thing you knew, we were looking at engagement rings, and you seemed fine with it.
Yeah, I would rather everything be clear and above board. I mean, I wasn't processing the idea of proposing to you well, so how would I know, like, independently to go buy an engagement ring that you like? You know, could have been some.
So did you feel at that time like I was rushing you or pushing you into getting married?
No, I mean, I was feeling a little bit of pressure in terms of, like we talked about earlier, just like my behavior and my habits and sort of wanting to just party all the time, right? Just, yeah, we can be married as long as we party. Well, that's not actually a good way to be married. That causes problems.
Well, and that didn't get communicated to me because
No.
I was not aware that that was an expectation that you had. But sidebar to this story is that when you go engagement ring shopping, always get a written quote on your ring.
Oh, yeah.
Because the ring that I have is not the ring that I was supposed to have. There was 3 different sizes of rings that we were looking at, different diamond sizes. And the one that I liked, of course, was the big one. So you had the guy write down on the business card the number and what it was going to cost and everything. He wrote down the amount for the smallest ring. And when you went to purchase the ring, then they had to give you...
Yep, they had to stand behind their estimated price, which was 50% of what it was retailed for. So we saved a boatload of money.
And I do feel bad for whoever made that mistake, but
yeah, they recovered it. They're fine. They're selling diamonds. I mean, it's just like they were probably making money on the deal anyway.
That was kind of a little bit of kismet in the whole situation. And it wasn't long after that we were married. I want to say it was like we got engaged in December, we were married in June.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about the wedding. But also before that, we had some really great premarital counseling from a pastor, friend of ours. And in that premarital counseling, he talked about a couple of different concepts that I feel are really, really, really needful to be heard right now. Because in every Hollywood movie, and in fact, our pastor this Sunday was talking about this. Like, people think that being in love, like the infatuational romantic love feelings, are what validates their relationship.
Yeah, butterflies and the whole goosebumps and all this and this excitement.
Yep. And so then that means if you're not having that anymore, that you must not be meant to be with that person. Right? And what was so emphasized in our premarital counseling, and I'm just really grateful for it, is that idea that love is a choice, it's an action. And not that it can't be a feeling, right? Like, there's times where we definitely feel a very romantic connection with each other, and then there are other times where there's a lot less of that. But love is actually an action, it's actually a choice. So was that a new idea for you, or is that something that you connected with really easily?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of a new idea. I was actually talking to our sister-in-law, Angie, the other day about how divorce was almost still a taboo thing in, like, the 80s when we were growing up. Like, you just didn't know very many people who were divorced, and there were a few people in my family that were divorced, and it sort of gives you some perspective on what's involved in marriage and, like, the work that's involved, and it's a process. I mean, anything is process, so.
Yeah. And I think at this point, this far into our relationship, we were well past those romantic butterfly feelings that you get at the very beginning of a relationship. We already had a really deep connection with each other. And then I think also because of our faith, our Christian faith, we knew, really the ultimate example of love being Christ's sacrifice for us. That's the kind of sacrificial love that we were being called to show to each other. Of course, that's very different to talk about it on paper versus in person.
Sure.
But I also remember talking with Pastor Brian a lot about, and even Bridget, his wife, just said, divorce is a word that you never use. You never use this word. And I caveat with that, like, there are times where I think divorce is appropriate if there's abuse or infidelity that can't be resolved. There is, for some people that is the healthiest and best option. But for so many other couples that I know of, the word divorce is a word that they use to manipulate each other, to get what they want or to win an argument. And I think it's really, really unfortunate. So do you remember them talking about that? Like, just divorce is never something you get to talk about. That word doesn't ever get used.
Vaguely. I don't recall a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
I obviously agree with it.
Mm-hmm.
Just on principle, really, too. I mean, what does marriage exist for, right? Like, why do we do this?
Mm-hmm.
Why do we make this commitment? It used to be something of profound significance
Mm-hmm.
to leave your mother and father and cleave to a woman or man, and that was it.
Mm-hmm.
That, think about how I always frame it this way: when it's like you read an obit of a man or a woman who passed away and was married to their spouse for 60 years, and you're just, wow, I can't believe they did that. I can't believe it.
Mm-hmm.
It's, no one's like, this person got married 5 or 6 times, and wow, I can't, I can believe that.
Yeah.
It's like, as soon as this thing becomes too difficult or whatever, it's
Mm-hmm.
turn it in before the warranty expires, I guess, huh?
So I think because we had really in-depth conversations in premarital counseling about what a Christian marriage is, and this is not to say Christian marriage is better than any other marriage. This is just saying the values of a Christian marriage are certain things, and not using divorce as a weapon is one of those things, and sacrificial love is one of those things. But the idea of covenant,
Yes.
covenanting, so not just a promise and not just a vow, but a covenant, like a very, very solemn, deep dedication and commitment to this other person, like no matter what happens. I feel like that got really impressed upon me during that time.
Yeah, and I think the older I get, the more I recognize sort of the value of taking your commitments seriously, right? And like being a person of your word and
Integrity.
Yeah, I mean, just being a person of substance and honoring those things, and like not just being a fleeting whatever.
Yeah. Not relying on your emotions to guide the ship necessarily. Not that emotions are bad. Emotions can tell us a lot. But there has to be something that is a stronger anchor than that. And
you have to like serve something outside of yourself. And this isn't like a pitch for Christianity or God or whatever, but if the highest thing in your life that you serve is your own desire and wishes, I mean, you're a flawed person. We all are. Everyone falls short. You're basically saying that the highest order of anything in this life worth serving is me.
Yeah.
And everyone else gets it wrong, and I should just follow my own whatever whims. Well, that's gonna get you in trouble. I know, because that's what I did for my early 20s. So it just means recognizing the power of something, whether it's a relationship or the taking the oath or the commitment, and like believing the vows, right? Like I said, this isn't about God, although it is, because that's ultimately really where it all terminates. But it's just, when you say those vows, like, think about that being true. And a lot of times science backs this up. Think about what biology shows us when a man and a woman have intercourse. You know, their bodies are literally transacting and establishing an order with each other. You know, it's meant to kind of work that way. So
So we got married. The wedding was amazing.
yes.
I think we both have very different memories from the wedding day, though. What are some of the things that you remember?
Well, we got married on your farmyard.
Yeah.
So I work for your brother.
Yeah.
So I see where we got married all the time. So I do fondly recall that moment. And I think about all of the friends that we had who performed music during the service and how fortunate we are to have just creative and talented people who were willing to drive all the way out to Mott to play music at our wedding. And I remember, you know, the reception and everything like that too, and it was kind of a big hoorah with me and my buddies.
It was not for me.
So
I remember the gravity of saying my vows. Like, it was, I really feel like there was a divine moment there where I really feel like the Holy Spirit was telling me that there was going to be some really rough water ahead, which there was. And just knowing that no matter what, I was committed, and I also knew that I was backed up divinely in that. I just had such a physical sense of that in that moment. I then remember the reception where you were doing donkey kicks and getting crazy with your friends, and at that point I was done with people and I needed to introvert, and so I spent almost the whole reception outside talking to my best friend. And you know, it's just like we are very different people, and we were very, very different people at that point. But I do remember just the sacredness of that day, as well as some of the absurdity of it, and it was kind of a foreshadowing in many ways of what was to come. And after we got married, then we went through 3, 4, 5 years of really rough times, which we don't have to get into. But I feel like one of the things for me that got me through that time was just having such a sense of what my vows really meant.
mm-hmm.
And then having a lot of friends around us, a lot of other young couples around us who were, you know, of the same faith, who we could just even spend time with and like be around. And I feel like it was a really staying and steadying thing. And sometimes I think back, like, I wonder if we'd even still be married if we didn't have those friendships at that time.
And God certainly brought some people into our lives that kind of helped center us a little bit on our marriage. Like having married couple friends, right?
Yeah.
Not just your friends and my friends. And sometimes we hang out with your friends and their spouses. And sometimes we hang out with my friends and their spouses. No, this was married couple friends brought into our lives. And they were also newly married, and so they were going through whatever rough adjustments, and they've remained lifelong friends as well.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that helped a lot. I mean, was an pretty independent person, and just kind of used to just not being accountable to anybody else for anything. So,
and for me, having grown up in the church, and this kind of gets into the weeds a little bit, but I feel like it's important to say because it was something that I was really, really struggling with and spent the better part of the last 2 decades working through. And that was this idea of men are supposed to do certain things and women are supposed to do certain things, and that there's these defined gender roles, and I was supposed to submit to my husband and you were supposed to be the spiritual leader. And of course now I've theologically studied that very deeply and have worked through that and have come to a very different conclusion about all of those things. But at that time, I was trying to force you into a certain box, and I was trying to force myself into a certain box. And I think that was so dehumanizing of both of us. Of course, I was doing it from a place where I was trying to follow my faith, and I thought that this is the way that things were supposed to be, and I thought that this was ultimately was what was going to make us both happy and fulfilled. But I remember a very specific point. It was probably about the time I went back to grad school, where I could no longer deny my own giftings or your abilities, which neither of which line up with those typical gender roles at all. In fact, you're a very naturally nurturing person. You're holding the cat right now. Like, I don't really care about that. Like, I'm not naturally nurturing. I'm a natural leader. You are more, you're not particularly assertive. You prefer to go inward into yourself. And that's not to say that you can't lead and that I'm not capable of following, but the idea that both of us had to fit into these roles all the time and tick these boxes in order for our relationship to be legitimate in the faith was really, really damaging to me. Like, I still carry the scars of that, and it's really affected how I show up in the world to this day. I'm still learning to give myself permission to show up as who I really am. But I remember this time, I want to say I was like 28 or 29. So we had worked through the worst of our beginning marriage years, which so many people go through, by the way. Like, that's really, really normal.
Yep.
So if you're in that phase of your relationship, it's not going to last for forever. Know that there's better times ahead. Hang in there. It gets better. Keep working on yourself. Keep loving your partner. But I remember this moment where I just said to myself, what would happen if I just let Billy be who Billy is created to be, and I let myself be who I'm created to be, and just see how our relationship works? And as soon as I did that, and I don't know that I ever articulated this to you, things just started to flow for us. And I feel like that's where healing really started to happen in our relationship, from some of those early years and some of the things that happened. It's like, there's nothing wrong with you that you're the way that you are, and there's nothing wrong with me that I'm the way that I am. That's actually how God made us. And the more I can encourage you to step into the things that you're gifted in, and vice versa, the better off we were. And it was just kind of like recognizing the image of God and the sanctity of life in each other that I think really started to allow us more freedom within our relationship. I don't know if you resonate with any of that, because you came from a very different background.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really have any preconceived ideas about how the marriage dynamic works.
And you were raised by a feminist. Thank you, Rose. I'm so grateful for this fact every day of my life.
And I'm just kind of a go with the flow, like, I'm a natural order guy, right? Like, just like, let's see how it plays out. And then we'll like adopt our behavior based on that. Like,
So that was one big hurdle that I think that I personally had to work through, and I know that you had some of yours. But I feel like, what is the thing that has held us together through multiple illnesses, through really tough financial times, through really tough relational times? You know, if you think of the common denominator of all of that, it is our shared faith.
Yeah, we have to, like I mentioned earlier, your marriage has to be kind of pinged to something that's bigger than both of you, right? And that's kind of the thing that's going to help inform your ability to love your spouse, forgive them, have grace, grow with them too, right?
Yes.
You're not the same person 15, 16 years into a marriage that you were 5 years into a marriage. And yeah, I mean, devotion to God, devotion to the oath that you took before everyone you know, right? You said these things, take it seriously.
The other side of that is that, where does the energy come from to stay committed when there's nothing in you, body, soul, or spirit, that wants to? It's like, that has to come, in my opinion, in my experience, it has to come from a supernatural place during certain times, because things just do get really, really hard sometimes. You want to quit, you want to leave, you want to say the D word. So I feel like our faith has been one of the biggest things that has kept us together. But I think part of that has been that I feel like God's allowed me to see who you were going to become. You know, like, yeah, you were kind of messed up in your 20s, but I always knew that wasn't who you really were. And as you've grown and as you've developed as a person, that's actually improved our relationship, and I hope that's the same on my end. But that common faith, that common tie, that common accountability, that common place to draw upon in those hard times, I think is so critical, and something that I think a lot of couples miss out on.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of struggles are kind of a temporary state, you know, and hardship can teach you if you let it, right? So when I reflect on who I was in my 20s, I'm not proud, but I'm a wiser person for it, right? So that's added to how I sort of seek God and serve Him, and also serve our marriage. So
in the early days of, before marriage, early marriage, there's all kinds of things that I read and all kinds of messages that I picked up, and even from my upbringing and going to a Christian college. And a lot of those things I feel have not been they have not produced good fruit in terms of just the messages that they carried were not functionally valuable. But one thing that I carried from my early years that I still really kind of agree with and hold to, and I'm curious what you think about it, is the idea that Christian marriage, at least, is not designed to make us happy. It's designed to make us holy, meaning that how many people go into a relationship because they think it's going to make them happy, and then they get into it and they realize how much work it's going to be.
yeah.
So in Christian marriage, you're committed no matter what, which means you can't change the other person.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
the only thing you can change is yourself.
Sure.
So I feel like that is still a functional concept. What do you think of that? Marriage making you holy versus making you happy?
I'm sort of the mind that the pursuit of happiness is kind of generally overrated. And life is not I'm not suggesting that it's wrong to want to be happy or to seek things that give you joy, or that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying its importance is overstated. That's all I'm saying. And I think that people should want to be sanctified through their experiences to
become a better person.
Yeah. I mean, I want to paraphrase that. I think Aristotle might have said that the meaning of life is to grow in knowledge of God, right? And that was his conception of God, not Christian God or whatever. But the point is like to sort of seek out that spiritual, the limitlessness of that, and the mystery of the universe, and like all of these things. So to me, it's like the idea that marriage is designed not to necessarily make you happier, but to make you holier. I would certainly say that's true. And there again, I'm not saying it doesn't mean it shouldn't be happy. Yeah. We have a lot of fun. And
yes, I would say that we're very happy. But I think that happiness hasn't been the goal. I think the goal has been to do life together well. But I think also another functional concept that I carry from those early years that I think is absolutely crucial is that I don't expect you in your humanity to meet all of my needs. In fact, I know that you can't. I know that only God can meet all my needs. And then anything that I get from you is like bonus. That's awesome. And where am I finding my identity? Where am I finding my fulfillment? It's going to be in God first. Yes, I find fulfillment in my relationship with you. But if I'm expecting you to make me happy all the time, I'm going to be constantly disappointed. and then I'm going to think this relationship is invalid and we should never have been together. And how many people do we know who have told themselves this message or have ended relationships that have walked away from things with honestly a trail of destruction behind them because their expectation from their relationship was that it was supposed to make them happy.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot going on society-wide. You know, the divorce rate is somewhere north of 60%, I'm sure. I don't know exactly, but, you know, they talk about this loneliness epidemic that's causing all sorts of, going back to the stress and, like, mental health, and people are alone in a crowd, right? Like, they don't feel connected to anyone in any meaningful way, and they don't know how to bridge the gap between having superficial relationships and having meaningful relationships.
Yeah.
Because we're losing the capacity to not kind of be so self-focused in terms of how these things work, and to be a scorekeeper in terms of how this thing is shaping out for you, right? And you shouldn't completely die unto yourself to be in a relationship with someone else, because that swings way too far the other way. Then but you know, love, like we talked about, is a choice and it's a process, and like the great Bee Gees song says, no one gets too much love anymore, right? Like but we have a funny idea about love. It's either romantic or it's familial, or, you know, and it's this kind of fluffy thing that you see in the movies when, you know, it's not quite that way.
All right, I'll allow your comments, even though you're talking about the Bee Gees, and I hate the Bee Gees. I'm sorry, guys.
We don't build our relationship on whether of the Bee Gees.
No, we don't. Okay.
It's a good line, though. It's a good line, right?
Yes.
No one gets too much love anymore. Mm-hmm. That is true.
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's talk about some hot button issues.
Okay.
Here's something that I've had thrown in my face. I don't know if you ever have. That we have an easier time in our relationship because we don't have kids. Do you think that's true? Do you think that's not true?
I've never had anyone throw that in my face. People who parent make a lot of sacrifices to raise children. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they lose themselves to parenting, right? Mm-hmm. Or the relationship, right? I mean, it's understandable how children could create a wedge in a relationship, mm-hmm. because they require a lot of attention. They literally are depending on you to stay alive. Mm-hmm. But whether or not that makes our relationship easier because we don't have kids, mm-hmm. The other thing is that, you know, kids can also be something that brings two people together. I mean, you literally bonded to create this life.
Yeah.
If that doesn't just profoundly sort of galvanize what you've done, you know, nothing will.
Right.
And so I think it's not necessarily fair to say it's easier to have a relationship without kids, because there's just like an element. It's just a different animal, right? It's just an element that's not quite there. Mm-hmm. And you know, it means we are going to have to exclusively depend on one another, mm-hmm. versus having grown children, or, you know. So there are things there are benefits we're not going to gain from it, and, you know.
And there are couples that end up separated or divorced because of the lack of kids and the struggle with that so many go through.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to call it like an emptiness, mm-hmm. in the home, but, you know, kids can be a multiplier of love in the household too, right? And so, but they can also, like I said, be a distraction and drive a wedge and make it so that you forego opportunities for romance and to, like, spend time with one another, and, like, but
My current theory on this and what I've seen happening with us is that just because you don't have kids doesn't mean that you don't end up in a caretaking capacity anyway, in some way, shape, or form. And I almost feel like it's meant that some of us in society are not to have kids so that we can take care of, and this has been our life for the last 10, 15 years, helping different family members go through cancer battles, taking care of grandparents, going through memory care, parents with health issues, other people in the community. We're able to open our home up to people that we would not be able to open our home to if we had kids.
Yeah, we still have the capacity for that kind of love. It's just a little bit different. And yeah, I mean, it takes all kinds of people to make the world go round. And, you know, I mean, our childlessness isn't entirely by choice. So the ability to love and care for others is there. It's not it's there. You know, I'm a lover, man. I want to like take care of people.
Like I said, he's the nurturing one.
Yeah, I want to help people. I want to like make sure they're okay and like build them up, you know.
I want to help people too, just not in the same way that you do. But again, like that's honoring each other's giftings and abilities within our relationship. And I just think that, like you said, it's not that it's harder or easier, it's just different. And those that have kids and look at us and say, oh, it's so much easier for you guys to still like each other and still have fun because you can go do things and you can do this or that, when they don't realize some of the other emotional pain or struggles that we've been through, or some of the other caretaking capacities that we've had to take over because people that have kids, that have families, aren't able to pitch in with those things. So I would say I agree. I think that it's not necessarily easier, but I do feel like we still have a lot of fun together and we still really like each other. And why do you think, almost 18 years into this marriage and I don't even know how many years into this relationship, why do you think we still have that? Like, we goof off, we laugh hysterically multiple times a day.
We have a like sense of humor, I guess, and we both like kind of goofing on each other and not taking things so seriously. And
although we can both be very serious.
Yeah, I can be a little uptight sometimes, but
curmudgeonly, maybe.
Yes, look me up at curmudgeondevo.com.
Shameless plug.
Give me likes and shares and give me the heart virus and tell me that you love me.
I don't know what you're talking about with this heart virus thing.
It's my little joke to myself about all the spam that I get.
Oh.
That they're trying to infect my computer with a heart virus by telling me I have a nice blog.
Oh, okay. Right.
Yeah, that's where that comes from.
Okay. So last hot button issue, just because I think it's kind of funny.
Okay.
Every couple has things about their partner that drive them crazy. What is something about me or that I do that drives you crazy?
Well, anything you do that drives me crazy, I kind of come around full circle and think it's cute after,
You do?
Yeah.
You really do?
Yeah. I mean, it can be just annoying, and then I just kind of laugh because it's a part of who you are, and it's you know what I mean? So you evaluate it that way. But like the taking the food off the plate thing kind of.
He hates it because I don't want a whole order of something. I just want a bite of something.
Or if I ask you if you're hungry and you say no, then I make something and you're like, oh, that looks good. Can I have some? It's like, no.
This happens in our house at least once a day, I would say. Yeah. So
yeah.
That's it?
Yeah.
Oh.
But it's still cute to me, so it's fine.
I don't know why you love me so much.
I just do.
So I don't like it when you don't close things because of the chi.
Okay.
We're working on that. And I also have to hide a lot of my food from you because you have a voracious appetite. And I will often be looking forward to something that I've been saving, that I've been looking forward to eating for a day or two, only to go and find that it is gone.
I like eating.
Food is your comfort food.
Food is my comfort food.
So now I'm having to either hide things or put labels on them. Yeah.
I'll learn.
Point is, we keep learning. I guess, and I look forward to. I want to be one of those couples that gets to those 60-year mark and does it joyfully. Like, is at no point do I want this relationship to feel like an obligation or a drag.
No,
Or
I mean,
like
you're not just guy. I mean, you're my friend too. Like, I want to share my interests with you and talk to you, and we don't really have like. I mean, it's funny because on some superficial level, we don't really have that many things in common, but we have a lot of fundamental things in common.
Yeah.
But we still take interest in what the other person is doing, because it's just more of that other person, so.
We also have shared pets, like our geriatric dog that is
Now
currently having hiccups over there. So as we wrap up, thank you for all of your thoughts today, and I do hope that this helps people, that it inspires them in their relationships. Like, Valentine's Day is great, although I know that you haven't always loved Valentine's Day, but you've warmed to it over the years.
Yeah, I that most of that is just like changing your mindset about it, right? You just change your mindset about it. Just think about it differently.
Yeah.
Think about it as an opportunity instead of an obligation.
But
Dog. The impeccable timing of
the
this.
impeccable timing of the animals. As you're thinking about Valentine's Day, it's great to have those romantic love feelings. There's nothing wrong with those romantic love feelings. But as you move further into a committed relationship, there are deeper things that can sustain you, and that doesn't mean that the romantic feelings don't come back over and over time. Like, we will go through times that are very much like a Hollywood movie, and then we go through times that feel more like we're friends with benefits. But it's just that when we're talking about what's ultimately fulfilling in a relationship, I feel that it's that deeper commitment, and I feel like so many people need to hear this, that your relationship's going to go through really shitty times. It just is. I don't care how good of a person you are and how committed you are to each other. There's still just going to be some really, really hard times, and that it is worth it. It is worth hanging in there. Like, I'm so grateful that I did not give up in our mid to late 20s on this relationship, because what we have now is far more fulfilling than I could have ever imagined it was. And what's really cool is that we allow space for each other to continue to evolve as people. Like, I'm not trying to control who you become. You're not trying to control who I become. So we create a safe place for each other to grow, and that actually helps us to grow together. So why don't you share with people some of the things that you have going on? You have the Curmudgeon blog, but what's another thing that you've really started doing a lot lately?
Now I'm working on scrap metal sculptures at Arc and Burn. That's what I call it. It's like welding. And so if you link up my Instagram and my Facebook, I kind of share a lot of stuff on there. So.
Okay, so is it Arc period and period Burn period?
No, it's just Arc, ARC, and Burn.
Okay.
All one word, lowercase.
You can tell I'm not a detail-oriented person.
So.
Well, thanks for joining me today, Scoob. Is there any last words you have for people? Any last words of wisdom?
Yeah, so if there's any men out there who are grumbling about Valentine's Day because they feel that they're obliged by card companies to do this nice thing for their wife, think about it differently. Just think about that you get to lavish this thing on your spouse, right? Like, it's an opportunity to give them something great, right? Spend a bunch of money on flowers. It's not a big deal. A lot of them are like, oh, shit's gonna die anyway. It's like, that's kind of the point, right? It's that you're willing to do that. Like, that's a sacrifice too, right? And your relationship is is an ally, right? Your partner is an ally. The challenges of life exist, whether you're with that person or not, right? So you want to be grateful and enjoy that you get to share it with someone.
Yep.
So that's my last 2 cents.
Thank you. Thanks for doing this.
It's been a pleasure. You're
We've been awfully serious. We were way more serious during this than I thought.
I was actually nervous that I was not going to be funny. And I wasn't funny, so.
You weren't funny on Curb, but I wasn't funny either. But I'm not funny. I've only said 3 funny things ever.
They were funny, though.
But you're a really, really, generally, almost all the time funny person.
Yeah, I guess.
So maybe next time, no tie and a little bit more fun.
Loosen up here. Get some more of this aphrodisiac juice going.
All right, friends. So on that note, happy Valentine's Day. Thanks for joining us for this episode. If you like this, please comment, like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And if you're listening on your podcast app, please give us a 5-star review, and we will see you next time.
Bye.